Welcome to another episode of Make America Civil Again. Before we begin, just want to remind you to subscribe and leave a comment at the bottom after you watch the episode. Well, today we are going to be talking about racism. All right, and here's a definition of racism. That is the definition that we will be using. So today I'll be talking with Glen Mathis, also known as my dad. Dad, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, grew up in an small town, upstate New York. Went to a small community college there. It was, I don't know if you need to know, but it was a predominantly white town. There were a few blacks there, but not that many, and we were always, corralled down to live in a certain particular area. Had some really good friends there, really good friends, both black and white.
You grew up before the Civil Rights Movement had.
Absolutely.
When you were growing up in upstate New York, when did you experience racism?
Well, my parents experienced that. The racism that I experienced was from a lot of friends. And I shouldn't say they were my friends, but there was a lot of, there were some fights. There was some people who definitely let me know that they didn't particularly care for me. But I also had some other really good friends who were in my corner, so to speak.
Give me an unforgettable example of racism in your life when you were growing up in grade school or middle school or high school.
I was in high school and I was elected junior class president. Well, there was a teacher who basically was our counselor and advisor, and he taught me nothing. I would try to make some decisions. He would completely undermine my decisions. Like I would say, you know, maybe I can select you to oversee this particular committee because we're going to plan on our junior class prom. And he would say, no, we're not going to pick them. We're doing this. And usually I felt really belittled in the meetings because I said nothing. And he just totally, and I really think that's really, I know that's what it was. He wasn't very kind to me. And I don't know, it was pretty blatant. Some of my friends, their parents didn't really welcome me to their home. They would simply say, they're busy, they're studying, they're not. They would close the door, you know, and I just figured, well, okay, I get it, you know.
So you got racism coming, seems like from the older people as you were younger, like from your teacher and then from your friend, like your parents' friends at school, right? So teacher, parents, friends at school, but like, what about kids in school? Were the kids in school, like were any of them racist towards like you or your Uncle Terry, Uncle Alan? Like, did you ever see anything between students or not?
Yes, that would happen. I would have fights periodically, and back then they would just blatantly call you the N-word.
So it sounds like you grew up with some real racism.
Yes.
Have you experienced any difference between living out in New York back then to living in Las Vegas now?
When I initially moved here, I was surprised at how backwards Las Vegas was, thinking that, you know, California being as liberal as it was and probably a little more accepting of those who are of another color. I thought it would be a little different. I thought maybe some of California's spirit would bleed over into Las Vegas, but no, that wasn't the case.
So even though you left New York and came here, people were still racist? Like,
people were, yeah. You know, you hear people use words like, well, I'm bilingual. Well, I honestly think oftentimes black people, and maybe I should speak more for myself, we are bicultural. I can feel comfortable in a black setting, or I can feel comfortable in a white setting. And I found a lot of times that I would just know when there was that tenseness in the air, just because I'd been around white people so much in my life, that also I thought, you know, I can tell what's going on here, you know. So, even on my job, my captain, my supervisor said, you know, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care much. I never cared much for you people. He told me that. And I thought, Ah, and he told me to my face, I thought, here, that's interesting. And I'm, being a firefighter, I'm running calls and doing all kind of things with this guy. But yet he let me know that, yeah, I don't care for you much.
Do you think that we experience racism the same today as we did back when you were in grade school, even when you were a porter down at the casinos?
I don't think so. However, if you have, and I want to be careful how I say this, if you have some people who are not of a particular education or particular cultural status, they may experience some of that versus maybe somebody who was educated. I hate to use a poor example like this, but I remember Harry Reid talking about Barack Obama. Well, he speaks so well. Really? He made that comment. I'm thinking, what does that mean, Harry Reid?
You've always experienced racism in your entire life, but you never call yourself a victim. Why? Because you are a victim of racism. So why don't you view yourself as a victim?
I've always had a family that was very achievement oriented. I think that helped. I had a dad who was an extremely hard worker, but he was also very innovative, and he was always, working at something. My mom and dad didn't spend a lot of time talking about, them white people or whatever. My dad and I, we just enjoyed ourselves. My mom and I, we just enjoyed ourselves. My grandparents, we just enjoyed ourselves. So we were more about enjoying a family setup. I had some highly educated people that were in our family, and didn't hear a lot of that. My grandfather, he grew up in a small little town in Pennsylvania, but my grandfather, when he would go to white people's houses, he would go to the back door. My family never really pushed the victimhood thing. It was just do it.
That's interesting about Grandpa, because I kind of feel like when I hear that, I kind of think yeah, but shouldn't he have kind of said I'm equal to you? Why are you making me go to the back when we're both human beings?
Back then, in the era they came through, different perspective versus today. Unfortunately, the liberal mindset, and I'm going to use that honestly, it has a way of manipulating words and changing definitions, but then it turns around and uses it as a tool to make me feel like a victim when actually they're manipulating my actions. I don't mean to sound all psychological, but using the word racism oftentimes has diverted people from the truth. We overwhelmingly, as black people, vote the Democratic Party, but they have overwhelmingly been the most racist organization going. Lyndon Baines Johnson, Senator Byrd, these are known racists, but yet they're a part of the Democratic Party, and we still very loyally vote with that particular party. However, things are changing a little bit, but I just see how racism has been turned in a way whereas it's manipulated us and been used in such a way it's been a tool against us.
What would you say to someone who looks at themselves primarily through the color of their skin, and so everything in their world is based around the color of their skin? What would you say to that person?
In this day and time, we do not experience racism like, let's say, a friend of mine, his wife, black couple. Her dad is a doctor. Her grandfather was a doctor. In World War II, he was a doctor, but he was not allowed at all to apply any of his skills to any white soldiers, only to the black soldiers. And that's racism. Today, we're not experiencing racism like they did. This Black Lives Matter, and we're getting all worked up over things that are actually very dangerous because it undermines the actual truth, or it's almost like it's almost like bewitching. It's almost like people's emotions are being manipulated, whereas they won't accept the truth, and pride becomes a factor, and they're going to say, well, I can't be wrong. I know that person is racist. But in all honesty, to speak to someone today, you're not experiencing racism like it used to be. And I experienced a little bit of racism when I was back in New York, back in last March. I was kind of surprised that a gentleman reacted to me in a Dunkin' Donuts. And it was like he thought I was going to hold the store up. And I'm looking at him, it was crazy. But him and his wife left the store and sat in their car waiting to see what I was going to do and watching me. That is ignorance, but that's a lack of exposure. Telling someone today, you know what? You're not really experiencing racism. You're probably creating a monster, and you're probably going to get some results of your activities. But overall, what do you expect?
So you're not saying that racism doesn't exist today. You're just saying the racism that you experienced, the racism you experienced as a child is nothing compared to what people experience today.
Not at all. Not at all. And that would upset a lot of people, because I've even heard many of black people say now, well, we can't be racist. Well, the bottom line is, and I'm going to sound a little, it's a spirit. The Klan had a spirit, whereas emotionally, they weren't accepting anything good about black people. Well, today, it's a spirit. It's the same thing. Ravi Zacharias said something, and I think it was really wise, but he said, we're in a place now where people are thinking with their eyes and seeing with their emotions. And I think that's what's happening a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, I personally want to say thank you.
Thank you, son.
Yeah. And thank you for watching. Tell me what you think. Don't forget to leave a comment. I want to hear what you think. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share on Facebook. And I hope to see you guys again next week. This is Manny. I'm out.